So the type of activities that I added to my classroom were things like we sat around in circles and discussed the topic of the week. And I would have students briefly discuss what they've read and then add to the discussion, because these were graduate students that were already working out in civil service. They had leadership roles. So they were bringing in this experience, and this learning process just really improved as we were moving along towards the classroom, through the classroom. And the further we went in the weeks, the more comfortable they felt with presenting and talking about their experiences and participating and collaborating and working in groups. The other thing that I added was presentations, group presentations. And that not only helped them work in groups and hopefully improve their group participation at work, because a lot of them would say that they needed more experience and they needed more practice in presenting before groups. And so I think this format really helped. Now, to step it up a notch here, I was having attendance problems with the students, and I didn't want to penalize them. I didn't want to take off points, because I'm not that type of professor that takes off points for being late, or it's just not my style. So what I did instead is I put them in groups, and I had a leaderboard installed, and Jessica from Cult helped me on this. I had a leaderboard installed in Blackboard in my course. And what we would do is, if they were responsible for each other in the group, so they chose a leader, and that person was responsible for getting everybody there on time for the class. So if everyone was in on time, they would sign the roll and turn it in, and they would get a point on the leaderboard. So by the time by the second week, it was already a competition of what group was on top, and where are you? They'd be calling each other, where are you? It's time, class, and you're late, and they were making excuses. I'm like, no, we're not. There's no excuses. They're here or they're not here. So if they're not here, your group falls once, and it was fun, and they really enjoyed that part, and I'd do it again. It really, and I implemented it halfway through one of the semesters, but then the following semester I implemented it again, and it's just the way to do it. It was really fun.
Okay, so in the lab, face-to-face, we do all the wet stuff, because you have to do the wet stuff in the lab. They can't take the heart specimens home to dissect them. So that's part of it, is safety, and another part of it is so that they have the guidance of the teaching assistant there to show them, which part of the heart is which part. And we also look at the models, and we look at the microscopes and practice focusing the microscopes. So all of the things you think of when you think of a science lab, that's the stuff we're doing face to face. One advantage, as I said earlier, of switching to that flipped model is I do have more time in the lab now. So I have added specimens, and we actually added a couple new models to our lesson plans there, or to what we do in the room. And I've added some experiments. So we didn't have time before, because the lab wasn't long enough, to do osmosis diffusion experiments that involved membranes, because the lab wasn't long enough. So we have added those in, including a lab using blood cells from the students so that they can see osmosis in living cells. And that has been really cool. They really like it, and they get very excited. We also added in presentations. So the students learn the models, and they present the models to each other as part of their review for the laboratory final, which we did not have time to do before. So instead of the TA standing up going, this is a cell model, and this is this, and this is, and talking for an hour and a half, the students have a chance to get up and talk and practice their public speaking.
For my face-to-face, I do a lot of collaborative activity. It's a lot easier to monitor collaboration face-to-face than it is online. You can do it online, but it's a lot harder to do. And I've had mixed results where that's concerned. So online, I don't do as much collaboration. So I have them do it in class. Where I group them, they start off. It's a way of scaffolding the thinking because it's going to get harder. I do a model, I model more or less, this is the kind of thinking I want you to do. I do think alouds, and then I ask them, now get in your little groups and now practice doing this with, this is your project that you're eventually going to build. So let's start the initial brainstorming there. And then from there, they share out, I give continual feedback, so that's kind of that formative aspect of it. And then I tell them, okay, so how are you going to extend it once you leave the classroom? Now that you've done this, how are you going to apply it outside? But it's always a lot about the engagement, about being able to continually go back and forth with feedback, and the collaboration works really powerfully in class. But of course, I'm talking about groups of students that no larger than 30. If you're going bigger than that, you have to be a lot more careful about how you do collaborations. But they work really well for me if you know exactly how you're going to plan them, what exactly the groups are going to do, and if you jigsaw them, it works even better face-to-face. A jigsaw basically means that each group is going to have a different task, and they're eventually going to switch off. That does not work well at all online, but it works very well in a face-to-face. And essentially that's why I picked those things for the face-to-face, because that's something that cannot be easily reproduced online for a hybrid class. So that's how, if you're trying to figure out what activities to put in face-to-face, put the ones that will be hard to put online in the face-to-face, and save all the discussions. You can put them online. That's, you don't need a face-to-face to be able to pull off a discussion. But to be able to pull off brainstorming for a larger project, I think face-to-face would work really well for that.
Once I started to do flipped, when I started to really move towards flipped, what I found is that class time really needed to be much more interactive. So I for the past, I guess, 3-4 years now that I've gone totally flipped, I do not do lecture, except for every once in a while if I have to do a 5 to 10 minute lecture on something. And even if I do a lecture, if I have a PowerPoint and I'm explaining some sort of concept, I make sure that it's very interactive. I stop at certain points to get the students involved. I ask questions. I get them to maybe do a pair share. But the main thing that I do is that in class, it's always about student interaction. And so I do small group discussions. Sometimes I have them work on particular projects that they're having to work on. I make sure that class time is actual hands-on activity time in some fashion, or talking to each other, as I said, groups, or working on a problem. I very rarely use the time to give exams, because first of all, I just don't do exams. Instead, my students do project-based kinds of things, so that I also make sure to incorporate time within the class for them to actually meet with their groups so that they can work on their projects, so that way they have me as an access, as a resource. That way I can have the computer on at the beginning, at the front of the class. We can go over any kind of hands-on, okay, this is how you do this is how, so they'll be watching that, but they'll have their computers and they're kind of following along. And then when I've done a 5 to 10 sort of mini kind of information session or hands-on or workshop, then after that they're free to work with each other, and then one by one the groups can come up and ask me questions, and we can work on any kind of issues. I can walk around. So face-to-face time becomes very, very interactive.